background in both. I have expertise in canning, bakery, and I've worked on snacks. I have baked and made holiday 5-tier cakes out of Julia Child's full butter pound cake recipe, because
Yeah.
they're the only
That
ones strong
sounds
enough to make the
delicious.
5 tiers hold without having support in it. And I can make the best homemade buttercream frostings with or without
Judy, are
flavor.
you a super taster?
I've been told that by flavorists actually that I should
Okay,
take the
right.
Prop 2 test, because I can taste nuances up to about 250,000 Scoville units in hot
Yeah,
sauces.
see, I have a friend who's a super taster. So she'd walk into an Indian restaurant. Maybe you could do this. She has her mulligatawny soup. She goes home and makes it.
Uh,
It's like,
well,
wow,
that's how I
this is
kept
like
part of my
exactly what I
career.
just had.
Yeah, I've been able to mimic things, and I can
That's
substitute
cool.
spices easily. If we ran out of a spice, I'd come up with a way of doing things, or I'd be the one telling the flavor companies, actually, okay, I need the flavor to gap here, do this, or tell them what to combine. I've done that many times in my career. So
Are
yes,
you
I
a
can do
super
that.
taster, Blake?
I've I I'm probably somewhere in between. So, but I grew up in restaurants, and my
Yeah.
dad was a chef, and so
Right.
yeah, I can definitely taste nuance, but probably nowhere to the degree that Judy
Well,
is talking about.
everybody has different strengths and limits. Like, I'm an ultra bitter sensitive, but I can tolerate bitters deliberately, where I know people who are ultra bitter sensitives who cannot tolerate bitters whatsoever. One of the ways that I used to create my own sensory when they started getting rid of sensory groups was I would just go up to people and ask them what their eating habits were, and based on their favorite restaurants, mid-chain and fast food, and what they grew up eating and their genetic heritage, meaning 5 generations ago, where were they? And by specific locale or region, even, in the United States, do a little bit of research, and I could tell, okay, if I make an onion soup, who am I going to ask to taste out of the groups of people that I know? And then if I can make an onion soup that I knew was the ultimate Americana, I hate to say it, but your Walmart, Target crowd Americana taster, right? If I could make something that they loved as much as your elitist 5-star or Michelin only people, as much as the person who has never gone anywhere and stayed in 2 towns all of their lives and only ate the same things out of their local whatever because that's how they were raised. If all groups liked it, I knew it was a winner, and I presented to marketing, be like, here you go, formula's finished. And here's the process, here's the steps, this is the engineering that you need if you want to build it. If not, we need this co-packer done. And I walk away. That was the reason I was successful in food. And I could do it across canning. I could do it across
Yeah.
dry goods.
So that's definitely a special ability.
Well, and I also
Now,
looked at everything
I
again
do have
from.
another question for you. Do you have food sensitivities because of that?
Now I do. I somehow developed an allergy to pork at some point. I'm not sure if it's from bug bites or whatever.
I
Well,
It's amazing. We all have a tongue, and we all have a nose, but we have different preferences and
yeah.
sensitivities
influenced by
and
the
all those
microbiome
things.
as well, because the
Yeah.
microbiome dictates what is pleasant at some time, at sometimes in your life, in your like sensory.
It's
And
have you read the Fasano paper, the recent one? Alicia
not the
Fasano,
recent
who
one.
did the whole zonulin stuff and gut barrier function, December 5th, maybe, or maybe late
Okay.
October. No,
No,
it's
I
in
didn't read
October,
that one.
November. He wrote a paper called The Physiology of Hunger, where he elucidates the 3 overlapping pathways for hunger being homeostatic, so energy balance, hedonic, which is, pleasure seeking, and then the microbiome can specifically demand nutrition through the vagus to the brain. So your energy balance is fine. You're not looking for something delicious, but your microbiome saying, "Hey, I need more I don't know. Like I'm trying to think of something you'd snack on that your microbiome would be asking for. I see kids doing this where they just randomly want something and then I don't know why. And I think, oh, maybe it's the selenium I don't know is in there, or maybe it's, something else. It's just very interesting to me.
Well, you know what? I believed that for many years, and again, after my exposure with the indigenous, that explained certain things to me about their, what they call the invisible creatures that help dictate what we need and our medicine.
Right, right.
That reinforced, because I do get cravings when I need something, and I started
Hmm.
investigating that many years ago, even before I came back into food science. When I was kind of
But what do they?
around
That's
medicine.
intuitive eating in a sense, right? Isn't it?
It is kind of intuitive eating, but it's also trainable. Part of my coaching at one point
Right.
for coaching people was I never restricted anybody when I was coaching people for fitness or diet, weight loss type of things in the past. I actually would have my first conversation would be with them, was because I have been in ORs and seen the size of stomachs when they're empty. I would explain
Mm,
to them the size of their normal stomach when they're not stretching it out, and a half. Usually it's like one fist and a half is about accurate, the size of your normal stomach. And when you have a good nutritious meal, that shouldn't be stretched more than maybe another 30% at most. Like, you just really want to fit that little bit, because that gives the stomach enough room without stretching to
mm,
actually work and have the right acid balance to break things down, et cetera, et cetera. And so knowing that from actually having spent time in a school for where I was doing OR stuff way back in nursing school, and having seen that, I applied it to my coaching and training techniques, where I would tell people that and then start breaking down, like, okay, I need you to write down in a diary before you even eat your entire thought process. Why are
mm,
you craving it? What were you thinking about at the moment that you're about to eat? I don't care if it's dinner time. You're going to take 10 to 15 minutes and you're going to write these things down. I'd
mm,
give
mm,
them the prompt questions. And this is based off of something from a nutrition teacher at Penn State, that a professor that I had, who actually wrote the textbooks in the 80s and started talking about the diary methods back then. And what happened is that momentary pause, even though they're smelling all the food and everything around them and they're craving it and they're starving, that momentary pause accidentally, now that we know this, causes that moment of vagal awareness and
mhm,
connection.
mm,
And eventually, as I told them, like, you have to portion down first. Don't eliminate. I don't care if you have to have your beer. But guess what? If you're going to have your beer and you want food too, you need to start with a small cup, not with the whole bottle, right? And
mm,
as they started portioning down and change, and I would say, like, okay, you hate vegetables. I get it. So we're going to hide some vegetables in your favorite chili that are more than the beans, right? So we're going to cut some kale or whatever in there. We're going to start rotating things. And your salad plate, you're starting off with this many croutons and cheese and dressing and that much greens. We're going to start to go this way with the greens and start to shrink the other ones, right? Eventually, their tastes change over a
mm,
approximate 2 to 3 month period, right? As they get used to doing this. And I enforce that diary for about 3 weeks. I tell them, like, you have to, and you have to read it back. You can share it with me or not, but I want you to give me a summary when you read it back. And the
mm,
discoveries they would make, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, every time I had a stressful call from my boss or something happened with my son, I grabbed a potato chip.
mhm,
Okay.
But
That trained them over time, and they started to get more connected with their cravings in a better way.
mm,
Sorry.
that's interesting. Well, it makes me think, I have a niece and nephew who are 11 years old and they're twins. And we have holiday meals with them. And it's amazing to see how different they are in their eating preferences. One will eat all their vegetables, the other won't. One loves this thing, the other doesn't. And it's like
mhm,
it's so crazy to me that twins who are in the same household, same food, same everything, have such different preferences, and it's
mhm.
all personal.
And also
It's
keep in
super
mind, though,
interesting.
it affects So I was around a lot of twins. Some of my best friends were twins, and I will say that all of that will affect their mental drive, because usually the one that is the better athlete, the better grades, or the more extroverted one is the one that is calmer with more diverse choices. The other one is a little bit more picky sometimes. Like there's a big association with behavior and diet, and that affects their whole microbiome. As a matter of fact, this whole thing really gets me worried about our social system today, with a lot of the changes going on, um, because of all the studies that do link, missing diet patterns, and what you mentioned about glyphosate, by the way, I never even thought about this before. The amino acids that it interferes with, they are precursors to a lot of the main hormones for mood and
Yeah,
mental
so that's
stability.
very true. So the serotonin in your gut actually is the tryptophan that the microbiome would make actually enters the indole pathway very
Yep.
specifically out of the gut. And so that is, and this is brain signaling, it's vagal nerve tone, it's a whole
Sleep,
bunch of other
circadian
things.
rhythm, everything.
You know,
Connected.
I just pulled up a list that I have on my computer from Fasano. This is a good time to actually say this. I'll read the list of things the microbiome now is known to make. Okay. Make
Mhm.
peptide PYY 3 to 36. If that sounds familiar, that's a satiety hormone. Okay. GLP-1. We've heard a lot about that. Glucagon like peptide 1. We make that. Ghrelin.
Mhm.
That's another one. Changes in ghrelin increase appetite. PYY decreases appetite, for example. Leptin, CCK, which is cholecystokinin, short chain fatty acids, indoles and GABA and 5-HTP. That's the short list. So we know the microbiome is making those things outside of us making them.
Mhm.
So can you imagine if you have like a peptide PYY signal coming out of the short colon, which is where that usually comes from, the distal part of the short colon or the small colon, or you've got another body one and you've got another one and you have all these, so what I wonder is there a mismatch in coordination sometimes between the microbiome's production and the body's physiological production? You know,
And that's what
is
causes.
that
Yep.
another thing that's happening that's creating, something?
Well,
So it's just very, very
so
interesting.
So, Sean Talbot, Dr. Sean Talbot, that has the certified mental wellness, that coined mental fitness some time ago. So, I certified through him. I've known of him and his associates for a long, long, long time. But he said in research a long time ago that there's a desire, especially in neurological hormones in the brain, to match in ratio with the gut, what the gut is producing, and vice versa. That's the two-way balance system that happens between your serotonin, dopamine levels, and things like that. And I've heard in talks with Dr. Bland's group by his, whoever scientists he has on, how it's not just even that. You are also talking about each distinct group or colony group in the microbiome that's able to produce, whether it's fungal or whatever, as they're discovering. There's also this triad balance system where they produce not just that, but signaling mechanisms that are nearly bioidentical to ours that can turn on and off different immune loads or immune system
Mhm.
reactions by our cellular metabolism. So everything is about this constant homeostasis within our cells and organs, as well as within the gut, is what all of this is shaping up to. And the microbiome guilds, which the term guilds by Dr. Zhao at Rutgers, um, Dr. Zhao told me years ago, the guilds, they want to work with us, but they can't work with us if they're not getting all the diversity of fibers and things needed to feed them, right? So it's this constant exchange, and the cravings that we were talking about partly is the guild trying to say, hey, we're starving over here. Like, this is how I explain it to when I'm tutoring. I'm like, can you imagine if you had a room full of kids, everyone had a different need, absolute nutritional need. and everything's nice and calm, and you're feeding everybody, but you missed getting the one thing that the one kid needed. And especially like when you're in a classroom, and this is primarily because it's a kid that I'm tutoring. When you're in a classroom, I mean, you know what happens when a kid doesn't get what it wants and they don't know how to express themselves. It's, screaming and all this stuff maybe might happen. And I said, what's that do to everybody else's mood for the rest of the day? Well, everybody else is like, what do we do? And things are kind of shifting attention, and it's chaos. And that's what I feel like people getting disconnected. And this goes back to the getting connected to nature and everything too. If you're disconnected from yourself and from nature too much, yeah, you're going to misinterpret, misfeed, and we've got so many choices of yummy things out there. And nothing against the flavor people, because I know, a lot of them are extracting from organic sources and things now. But I used to coach to people years ago. I'm like, if you're craving a flavor, once they get to understanding cravings, and you taste something that fulfills the flavor, don't you think, you tend to crave more a few minutes later because you haven't gotten the nutrient portion of it? That's another thing that's happened here, because we didn't know that there was more of a chain than just satisfying flavor. Because if you remember in the 80s and 90s, people were coming up with the flavor sprays and all kinds of things to just get that craving off. But people were starving on their diets. And that's all now, as we understand it, all part of the microbiome, you know?
Mm. Microbiome is brain response is a whole bunch of different things. I mean,
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Good to see you. I know you guys have a hard stop, so we'll stop here and I'll set up another one for later this month.